Hi, folks. My name is Cam Vedbrat, and I am Group Program Manager for the Windows Virtual Desktop team at Microsoft. This session is expand your application's reach in the enterprise with Windows Virtual Desktop. I'm here with our moderators, Lucas and Peter, and they're going to help with Q&A in the chat, and then they'll also help us with some questions at the end. Hopefully you've been enjoying the Build virtual conference so far, and we're going to dive right in. So in today's session, I'm going to cover a few things. I'm going to give an overview of desktop virtualization, why organizations are using it, and what the opportunity is around desktop virtualization for developers. I'll talk about Windows Virtual Desktop, which is our service on Azure for desktop virtualization. And then I'll talk about a few things that you can do as a developer to take advantage of the service. So why is desktop virtualization useful? Traditionally, organizations take on desktop virtualization to keep their data and resources safe and secure, while managing access to those data and those resources to precisely the people who need them. And this is really critical for organizations that work in heavily regulated sectors, such as financial services, healthcare, or government. As organizations start moving to the cloud, other use cases for virtualization have started to emerge, and people are using it more and more for these other scenarios as well. If you have a workforce where your needs are changing pretty dramatically, either because the workforce is elastic with seasonal workers, contract workers, or partners who are accessing your infrastructure, if you have employees that have a more unusual workplace, such as a touchdown space, or they're working in a call center where they may not have a dedicated workspace for that employee, or if that employee is working remotely, virtualization can be a good solution for getting them access to the apps and resources that they need. And if you have folks that are working with more specialized workloads that have more intense compute requirements, things like software engineering, design, or CAD, you can use desktop virtualization to instantly provision an environment for those users and make that environment available to them on any device. Windows Virtual Desktop is our service for desktop virtualization on Azure. This is a new service in Azure that launched last fall, and this is the best way to virtualize Windows in the cloud. With Windows Virtual Desktop, end users can get access from any device, and they get access to a full Windows 10 enterprise experience with Edge, Cortana, and the Windows Store. And we've worked across Microsoft to really optimize the experience for things like Office, OneDrive, and Teams. If you're already virtualizing Windows on premises, the service can help you reduce costs and simplify management relative to an on-prem deployment. And you can deploy and scale on Azure very, very quickly. There's one thing that's unique about Windows Virtual Desktop that I want to go into a bit more detail on, and that is the multi-session capabilities that are built into Windows 10 Enterprise. And these capabilities activate when you deploy your VM on Azure. So if you look at a typical personal desktop scenario, and this is a common setup that people will deploy when they're setting up desktop virtualization on premises, what they will do is they'll set up one virtual machine for each of their users. And they'll allocate that virtual machine a fixed amount of compute resources and memory. And this works well from a user experience perspective. But one thing that you'll observe is that the resource utilization on any one VM can be low on average. And the peaks in resource utilization come very inconsistently across different users. And so all of those periods of time when utilization is low is money being left on the table by that organization. So it's not the most cost-effective way to operate. Some organizations work around this by putting lots of users on a single VM that's running a server operating system. And this evens out the resource utilization in a good way, but then it trades off user experience because the server editions of the operating system typically don't have all of the latest features and don't present an environment that's consistent with what end users are used to having on their desktops. With Windows 10 Enterprise Multi-Session, you get the best of both worlds. You get a client user experience with server scalability. Windows Virtual Desktop is generally available around the world. Customers can place their VMs in any Azure region, and our control plane has a footprint that's constantly expanding. We have an experience estimator that you can use, or that customers can use, to figure out what is the best place, what is the best region to place their VMs to really optimize latency and maximize performance. And in June this year, customers will be able to actually choose the geography for their service metadata, which is a really important thing to be able to do for regulatory compliance, and it can also help with performance. There are thousands of organizations around the world already virtualizing desktops and apps with Windows Virtual Desktop. And these organizations represent a variety of industries, from financial services, manufacturing, healthcare, education, and more. More importantly, each of these organizations is a customer of the Windows developer ecosystem. They represent the developer opportunity around virtualization. We also have a rich ecosystem of partners helping organizations virtualize Windows. Citrix and VMware are two of the largest in this space, and they've each invested deeply in helping the customers they work with on premises to move to the cloud. Our list of partners isn't just limited to two, though. It's very large and ever growing. The list includes system integrators, folks that are creating value-add solutions around analytics, printing, and hardware support, all sorts of things. So let's dive into the architecture of Windows Virtual Desktop. The overall service consists of three major parts. There are clients that end users use to access the service. There's the core service in Azure that's managed by Microsoft. And then there are customer deployed VMs that run on Azure infrastructure. The client devices are really driven by customer choice. We have devices on every major platform: Windows, Mac OS and iOS, Android, Linux, and there's a web client as well. And the Linux SDK is now generally available for hardware partners who want to build solutions, tailored solutions that meet their customers' needs on the Linux platform. All of these client platforms can be used to deliver either desktops or apps based on what a customer needs to deploy. And Windows apps should generally just work without major code changes in most situations. When running on the service, apps can also take advantage of GPU-enabled VMs on Azure. This is an important thing for applications that need fast rendering or need to run simulation or AI workloads. Our new NVVM series makes this even easier. You get tons of flexibility that really help an organization manage cost when they're deploying apps on their GPU-enabled VMs. Customers with these VMs can actually use a full GPU or partition it down to meet the right performance and cost for their needs. We've worked across Microsoft to deliver a really great experience on Windows Virtual Desktop. Apps will show up in the Start menu, just like local apps. They show up in the taskbar, they can fire notifications, they appear in the app switcher as if they're running locally. And apps can even access the local clipboard or storage, so you can copy, paste, and open files the way you might expect. Apps running on Windows Virtual Desktop also benefit from the breadth of devices in the Windows ecosystem. If your application uses multiple monitors or takes advantage of multiple monitors, that will work. And our input capabilities go beyond simple keyboard and mouse, so you can use things like pen and touch as well. Speakers, microphones, printers, even more. All of these types of devices can work seamlessly through our device redirection with Windows Virtual Desktop. Now, Windows provides the best client integration experience out there, but many of these capabilities are also available when using clients that are built for other platforms as well. One major investment we're making with Windows Virtual Desktop is in making app management easier in virtualized environments. And this solves a big problem that organizations face when they're moving to the cloud. Typically, an app will have many different user communities that they're delivering to. Perhaps in a single organization, you could have engineering, marketing, and finance, each with their own set of applications that those users expect to use in the course of their work. And there are three approaches that organizations use to solve this problem in a virtualized environment, but each has a set of drawbacks that we're looking to solve. One approach is to actually create separate VM images for each role. So you'll have an image for your marketing department, an image for finance, and another image for engineering. And then this does a good job of actually separating the apps out, but it creates a large number of images that an organization then has to manage, patch, and maintain. That can get expensive. Another approach is to create a single Mondo image that contains all of the apps that any end user in the organization might want to use. And then when a given user signs in to their VM, they can employ masking technology to only make the right apps available to that end user. And this can work, but it has some fragility in the size of the VMs that you're creating. And it can be challenging from a licensing perspective, depending on what expectations the ISV has that built the apps for how those apps are going to get used. A third approach is to take on app streaming. And with app streaming, you get a bit more isolation, but it introduces latency. As a user signs in, they have to wait for the app data and app resources to actually get streamed into their VM. And it can be costly in that you have to stand up streaming infrastructure to actually serve the apps to your virtual desktops. And that streaming infrastructure comes with additional complexity and additional cost. So to address this, we can untangle this complexity as people move into the cloud with a new capability we have called MSIX App Attach. With MSIX App Attach, we can solve this problem in a way that is more cost-effective and delivers a better user experience. If your app is already using MSIX, it will work with MSIX App Attach right away. So let's take a look at how this works. So here we have our three user groups again. And with MSIX App Attach, what happens is when a user logs in and their session is created on the VM, MSIX App Attach mounts the applications that are assigned to that user to their VM session at that time. So you can have a single OS image for all of your users, and they will get the apps they need served appropriately to them to match their needs at the time. So you've heard a bit about Windows Virtual Desktop on Azure and how organizations are using it. This creates new opportunities for you as your apps start getting used in the cloud more and more. And there are 4 things you can do to learn more and make sure that your apps run great on the service. First, if your enterprise customers need to use your app on a diverse set of endpoints, you can work with them to understand if remote apps with Windows Virtual Desktop are the right solution. This can be a big cost savings when compared to moving the app to the web or porting it in a way that would create platform native solutions on each of the endpoints. Second, if you haven't already done so, take a look at adopting MSIX for your app packaging and review the documentation on App Attach. Third, if you're using Azure DevTest Labs, you can explore Windows Virtual Desktop as a way to provision your dev and test environments for your own engineering work. We've added Windows Virtual Desktop license rights for developers who are using Azure DevTest Labs. So you can configure VMs in the cloud. You can configure the VMs for your cloud-based dev and test environments to be managed with Windows Virtual Desktop. And finally, make sure to design and test your app for multi-session environments. Multi-session is an important tool for helping your customers manage costs when using your app in the cloud. We've done a ton of extensive app compat testing, and most apps work fine out of the box. But making sure that your app can work well and that it can work well when multiple instances of the app are running simultaneously in a single VM will go a long way to help your customers save costs when running their apps on the service. So today, we discussed why organizations look to virtualization to solve their business problems, how Windows Virtual Desktop can help them make this move, and the opportunity this creates for your apps in the enterprise and what you can do to embrace that opportunity. There are some additional resources that are worth taking a look at on the slide. We've got great documentation on how you can get started, and there's a step-by-step deployment guide in our WVD virtual launch event. You can use the experience estimator to understand what the performance and latency will be like in different Azure regions that are running your app. And then there's also a cost calculator and more information on Azure DevTest in the links on the slide. Thank you very much. Again, I'm Cam Vedbrat, and this has been Expand Your Application's Reach in the Enterprise with Windows Virtual Desktop. I'm going to wrap up from there and pass to Lucas and Peter to help field any questions. Thanks.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for all the wonderful questions on the chat today. Peter and Stefan have been doing an awesome job just answering them in text as they come in, but there are a couple still outstanding, so we'll go through them right now. So Haim asked, Cam, can you use a virtual desktop with an app that accesses an on-premise server?
Can you use a Windows Virtual Desktop with an app that? Yeah. So this is a great question. Can you use Windows Virtual Desktop with apps that access on-premises resources? Yes. If you have an express route set up with Azure, you can absolutely have your VMs connect back to on-premises resources and behave as if they were running on-premises.
Great, thank you. Then Brian asked a question. I am more interested in auto-scaling policies that are apparently coming soon, not on a schedule, but I want to be able to scale my host pool as the users in a 24/7 operation fluctuate by shift. It's not tied to the clock, however. Any thoughts on that, Cam?
So yeah, we've been investing in improving our auto-scaling capabilities quite a bit over the last few months. And we did launch a set of scripts and a set of guidance on how to use Azure Automation to do auto-scaling. And we'll continue to improve on those capabilities in the months ahead. So we don't have any specific announcements beyond what's been announced already today, but it is something we are working on, and we definitely hear the feedback.
Thank you. Andre asks, can we use WVD through the Azure portal?
Can we use WVD through the Azure portal? Yes, you can use WVD through the Azure portal with our new Spring update, which is in public preview. This capability was released on April 30th, and so it's brand new. And so if you already have host pools deployed or if you're already using Windows Virtual Desktop and you already have host pools deployed, there's a set of migration steps that you can run. It's a script that you can run. It'll convert your host pools to work with the Spring update. And from there, you'll be able to administer them through the Azure portal. And you'll also be able to use Azure PowerShell and the new ARM-based interfaces to manage your VMs. And so there's quite a bit of new management capability in the Spring update.
Thanks for the question, Andre. Next question comes from Jonathan. Any plans to allow guest Active Directory accounts access to WVD? They currently don't seem to be supported.
Guest Active Directory accounts. I don't have the answer for this one handy. I'm not sure if Peter on the line can answer this more precisely.
Right, so Jonathan, we'll work with Peter offline to see if we can get you an answer on the chat. Thank you.
Sounds good.
And I think with that, those are all the questions that are outstanding that we're not actively writing a response to on the chat. Thank you very much for all the wonderful questions today. And Cam, back to you.
All right. Well, thanks, everyone. Hope you have been enjoying the Build Virtual Conference so far and have a great rest of the week. Thank you.